Now, Peter Sprigg is on the line with us. He's a senior fellow with policy studies at the Family Research Council and the author of the Family Research Council's brochure, The Top 10 Harms of Same-Sex Marriage, Family Research Council, frc.org. And Peter, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Here's just a general question that baffles me. Why would anybody who is straight sit around all day long thinking about gay men and what they're doing and what they should be or should not be doing, or gay women for that matter? Why give it any concern at all? Why all the fear and loathing?
Well, it's not fear and loathing, but there's concern about the institution of marriage because it plays a very important role in our society. Marriage has always existed as a union of a man and a woman.
That's not true.
It's always existed as a male-female union.
No, that's not true.
Until our generation, every
that's
culture,
not true.
every religion, every civilization has
That
always...
is not true.
It is true.
That is not true.
It is absolutely true.
How many wives did Solomon have?
I said a male-female union. Yes, there have certainly been cultures that practice polygamy, but it was always a male-female union.
Okay, so and in the Bible, does it not say that if a man rapes a woman, that's a way that she can become his wife? Yes, it does.
No, that's not exactly what it says.
It is exactly what it says.
All right, are you going to let me answer your question?
My point is that our definition of marriage, and in fact, right up until the 1960s in the United States, it couldn't be a woman and a man who were of different races. You're right. Same-sex marriage is not acknowledged in the Bible, but the quote definition of marriage that you're promoting is very different from the definition of marriage through the vast majority of biblical history.
Well, let's get aside from biblical history. Let's just talk about biology. It takes a man and a woman to make a baby, and it takes a man and a woman to give a child both a mother and a father. That's the reason why we define marriage as the union of a man and a woman. Those are important public purposes. Reproduction is an important purpose for society, and we know that children do best when raised by their own biological mother and father, committed to one another in a lifelong marriage. And our definition of marriage... So
sterile people should not be allowed to marry?
There's no way to to exclude them from marriage without very intrusive inquiries that we probably would not tolerate.
Which are very similar to the very intrusive inquiries that you want to make of gays.
No, we know absolutely that no same-sex couple will ever reproduce by natural...
Well, I'll raise my hand right now. I had a vasectomy after our third child was born. I am not capable of producing children. Are you telling me that I should now divorce my wife?
Well, I don't know what your wife's condition is, and I've heard of people who have still conceived children after having...
She probably could conceive. I don't know.
100%. The point is that there is a difference between between opposite-sex unions as a class and same-sex unions as a class. It's an immutable and undeniable difference, and that's why we treat them differently.
Well, wait a minute. Are you suggesting that in vitro fertilization doesn't exist?
There are other... Not every child is born as a result of a married husband and wife, but it is the norm, and I think it's legitimate for the law to uphold that as a norm and an ideal.
Well, it's the majority. It's not necessarily the norm, but it's the majority is normal biological sexual intercourse produces babies, but there is a statistically significant number of people who go through in vitro fertilization. It's a growing number, and it's also something that particularly lesbian couples are using. And that satisfies your requirement that they be able to have children.
It doesn't satisfy the requirement that they provide those children with both a mother and a father, though, which is also an important element of it.
Well, but we have, the preliminary evidence on the studies of kids who've grown up in gay families is that they're turning out just fine. Thank you very much.
Well, that's not what the study done by...
It's what the American Academy of Pediatrics said last week.
Yeah, the American Academy of Pediatrics is relying upon studies that have been shown to be very methodologically weak. And
wait a minute,
at best,
Peter, you're going up against the doctors, the pediatricians, the doctors who treat children. You're telling them they don't know what they're talking about?
Because there was not a poll taken of every member of the American Academy of Pediatrics before this was done. That policy statement represented the position of the 6 people who wrote it. And there's another American College of Pediatricians which has taken exactly the opposite position. So pediatricians are not united on
The
that.
American College of Pediatricians is not the official AMA recognized agency. It's a right-wing spin-off, or a right-wing crank group. The American Academy of Pediatrics, the official group that represents pediatricians in the United States, has said kids do just fine in gay families.
Well, they're taking a position that, frankly, that's based on political correctness and not based on the science. And the same is true of the AMA, the APA, and a lot of these professional organizations. For decades now, ever since the early 1970s, they've been controlled by political correctness and not by the science. It's really shameful.
So do you think it was really shameful when, in the 1960s, we started letting people of different races marry?
No, because racial segregation never had anything to do with the purpose of marriage. When there were laws against interracial marriage, those were burdening the institution of marriage in pursuit of a goal that had nothing to do with the purpose of marriage. They were burdening the institution of marriage in pursuit of racial segregation.
But you're arguing that the purpose of marriage is to produce children, and I'm saying, producing children, A, is not always the consequence of marriage. In fact, it's frequently people produce children without marriage. And B, I'd say the real purpose of marriage is to be able to inherit, to be able to visit your spouse in the hospital, to be able to have literally tens of thousands of benefits. I mean, there's over 10,000 laws on the books in the United States that have the word marriage in them, and almost all of them have to do with economics.
Well, in California, whose law was being debated before the Supreme Court today, same-sex couples already have 100% of the rights and benefits of marriage under California state law.
But not under federal law.
Well, that's true, but
not by the Internal Revenue Service. And so why should we discriminate against them?
Well, again, the public...
Because they can't have babies?
Because the public purpose of marriage is to encourage responsible procreation. That may not be
the public purpose of marriage is to
there'd be no reason without procreation. There would be no reason for it to be a public institution.
Okay, I will leave you with the last word. Peter Sprigg, FRC.org. Thank you.